It was one of those quiet autumn mornings in the small town of Glenridge, when the mist still clung to the streets and the world hadn't yet decided whether to wake or keep dreaming. Michael Dawson walked the same route every day before his shift at the mechanic shop. His loyal companion, Rex, padded beside him, calm, obedient, and alert. To most passers-by, Rex was just a well-behaved German shepherd. But to Michael, he was everything: protector, best friend, and the last gift from his late wife, who had once been a police officer. Life hadn't been kind since her passing. Michael had been juggling fatherhood, bills, and grief, while trying to give his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, the life she deserved. The dog walks were his quiet refuge, a small moment of peace before the world's noise began again. That morning, as they crossed the cracked pavement behind the corner store, 3 young men leaned against the wall, laughing too loudly, the smell of cheap liquor floating on their breath. Michael noticed them but kept walking, hoping to pass without trouble. He tightened the leash, but Rex stayed steady, his sharp eyes watching the men's movements. One of them, tall, tattooed, with a mean smirk, snorted. "Hey, nice dog, old man," he called out. His voice dripped mockery. Michael didn't answer. Experience had taught him that silence was sometimes safer than words. But the thug didn't like being ignored. "What's wrong?" "Dog can't bark without your permission," he taunted. Before Michael could react, the man stepped forward and kicked Rex hard in the ribs. The sound that followed wasn't a growl, it was a low, controlled rumble that came from deep within Rex's chest, the kind of sound that makes even the boldest men hesitate. Michael's heart pounded. He saw Rex's muscles tense, his teeth flash white for a split second, before he barked sharply, stepping forward. "Rex! Sit!" Michael commanded. The dog froze instantly, though his eyes never left the attacker. The thug stumbled back, his bravado faltering. What kind of dog is that?" he muttered. Before Michael could speak, a female voice cut through the tension. "A police-trained one," she said coolly. Everyone turned. Standing a few feet away was a woman in a dark jacket and jeans, her badge glinting faintly under the morning light. Detective Laura Benton had been on her way to the station when she witnessed the scene. The thug scoffed. "Yeah, right. He doesn't look like no cop." Laura's eyes narrowed. "That dog served with the K9 unit. And by the way you just assaulted him, you might have just committed a crime." Michael blinked in disbelief. "Wait, you knew Rex?" Laura looked at him properly then, recognition dawning. "You're Michael Dawson. I worked with your wife, Claire. Rex was her partner." The words hit him like a wave. He hadn't heard his wife's name spoken like that in years, softly, with respect. The thug's grin vanished as the situation turned against him. His friends began to edge away, but Laura stepped forward. "Don't even think about it," she warned, pulling her phone from her pocket. "You'll wait here until backup arrives." The next few minutes were a blur. The young men were taken into custody after a patrol car arrived. Laura stayed with Michael, making sure he and Rex were unharmed. Michael knelt beside Rex, running a hand along his fur. "You okay, buddy?" Rex leaned into his touch, tail wagging slightly, as if reassuring him instead. Laura crouched down next to them. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," she said softly. Rex was one of the best dogs on the force. Claire used to say he could read people better than most humans. Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah. He still can." They talked for a while, the kind of conversation that felt easy despite the morning's chaos. Laura shared stories about working with Claire, how she'd trained Rex, how she'd saved her teen once during a dangerous raid. Michael listened, his throat tight. For the first time in a long time, the memory of his wife didn't ache quite as much, it warmed him instead. When they finally stood to leave, Laura hesitated. "You know, we've been short-staffed in the K9 therapy program. We help retrain retired police dogs to work with kids and trauma survivors. Rex would be perfect for it." Michael thought about it. "Wouldn't that mean losing him?" "Not necessarily," she said with a smile. "You'd just be helping out." You and your daughter. The idea settled gently in his heart. Emma adored Rex. Maybe, he thought, it was time for both of them to find something beyond survival, something that felt like purpose again. Over the next few weeks, Laura visited often, helping Rex rejoin training sessions. Emma bonded quickly with her, asking endless questions about her mother's work and Rex's adventures. Their home, once quiet and heavy with memories, began to fill with laughter again. One evening, after a successful training day, Laura stayed for dinner. The three of them sat around the table, Emma chattering, Rex lying at her feet, Michael watching them with quiet gratitude. When Emma ran off to fetch a drawing she'd made, Laura turned to him. You know, she said softly, Claire would be proud of you. Of both of you. Michael's eyes softened. Maybe. I think she'd be glad Rex is still protecting us in his own way. Outside, the evening sky deepened into gold. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching at a distant sound, then relaxed again, content. What began as a cruel act on a foggy morning had become something unexpected, a thread pulling lost lives together, weaving new beginnings out of old wounds. And as Michael watched Laura laugh with his daughter, he realized that sometimes, fate didn't come with warnings or reasons. Sometimes, it arrived disguised as chaos, and left behind the quiet grace of healing.